Kyle Moskowski, associate head coach, defensive coordinator, and I coach the inside backers. And this is my 18th year coaching and my 12th year at Frisco Lone Star.
Coach Moss, first off, thank you for doing this. Thank you for being here. And it's a pleasure to be here. Now, first, I just want to ask, spring ball started today, was the first day of pads being on. As a defensive coordinator, how do you go into that prepared?
Like I said, I've been preparing for this and preparing our kids for this since the last game of the year. Like I said, and it ended, and we went into Christmas break. But as a coordinator, you're already moving into the next year, trying to think who are the pieces, how do we need to develop them, and stuff like that. So I would say today is the culmination of a lot of weeks of us working to get to where we are. It's just the product that people get to see, and so. And even then, I'd say the years of time I've been here with Coach Rayburn, and it's stacking days on days on days, and the longer we can do it, the more we can build these kids up to the first day of whatever it is.
Now, I think you and I both have an understanding of defense. It is literally the tone of the team, and your energy on the field today was infectious. It energized the coaches. It energized the players. Like, just talk about how you try to approach that as a coach to lead your players.
As a player in high school and in college, I always really respected the coaches that represented what they were preaching. And so if they talked about, being healthy and eating correctly, I resonated with the guys that's the lifestyle that they led. They talked about lifting weights and conditioning, and like I said, it just always made sense for me to go, okay, this is what you're preaching to me. I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna follow that. Like I said, obviously you're represented in your life, and so, for me to bring energy today, that's me every day. I don't know how to do it another way. Like I said, it's just not in me to do it less. And I tell them all the time, like, listen, the day that you see me not giving you everything I've got, energy, relationship building, loving you, diving into the details of defense, I was like, is the day that you can cut corners too. But until that day happens, the expectation is all of us, everywhere on the field, offense, defense, like I said, we're all aiming towards one thing, and it's, that state championship next year, obviously.
And let me piggyback off of that. Where does this passion, this drive come from?
Honestly, man, like I said, I was 195-pound, defensive lineman in high school, and then I get to college, and I was very undersized, was 205, and I always had coaches that believed in me, that preached, work hard, things are going to happen when they happen, and I took that to heart, and I was like, look, if I'm not gonna be successful, I'm gonna not be successful on my terms. I'm not gonna be afraid to fail. I'm not gonna be afraid to give the most amount of everything I can give to try to achieve something, that's difficult, like I said. And so that started in high school, and then, it got refined in college, and then as a coach, it's a different mentality, right? You're stepping off the field, you're putting a whistle on, it's a little different, but there's a lot of carryover. The things that you do on the field in a high school player and a college player, you can carry those things over. And I found, just me being, I don't know, a better way to put it is just who I am. The kids resonate to it, and I resonate to the kids. And so that's just, I don't know, like I said, it's just who I am. Is really the answer. Like, it's just who I am.
And at what point in your life did you know this is what you want to do?
That's a simple answer. So the kids laugh at this all the time. I went to college to go be an ophthalmologist. That's what I went to go do. My degree is in life science. I always laugh that I'm an MCAT away from going to med school. All I got to do is take the MCATs. And so I came home as a junior in college, and part of the agreement for me coming home from my dad was you got to work. And I was like, okay, like that's not a big deal. And so I was working for American Eagle in the mall at Stonebriar Mall, and my high school coach called me. He's like, hey, we have a company coming in. I can't remember what their name was, like IPC, I think maybe. They were like, hey, we got them coming in. We want student coaches that have been Frisco guys. Would you be interested in coming and helping out? I was like, sweet, like, cool. I need to come use the weight room anyway, so I can keep getting my workout. I can get my condition in, awesome. And so I did it for a summer, getting up early, working out with the kids, like being around kids in high school, and found that I really enjoyed being around the youth. And I was pretty young then too. I was probably 2021. And so I went back to school that year, played, had a successful year. And then the next summer I came back, did the same thing, loved it. And then I can remember sitting there, I just got done with practice my senior year, and I call my dad, and I was like, hey, I think I want to change my major. And my dad was like, oh, what are you going to change it to? Like, he was thinking I was trying to go to something easier. And I was like, Dad, I don't want to be a doctor. I think I want to be a coach. And he was like, okay. And so I went and looked into it. I was a couple of classes I needed to take. I got emergency certified, and like I said, I really think it was the Lord calling me to go do this. This is my mission field. And so, I think it happened the way it happened. The Lord put me on that path, and it was like getting struck by lightning. I just knew that this is what I was supposed to do. So, and I've enjoyed every minute of it since I started. So.
And as a defensive coach, what would you say your philosophy is?
Simple. We are going to run to the football. We are relentlessly pursuing the football. We are going to be the most physical defense that a team has ever seen. Like I said, those are non-negotiables, and we are going to be the most elite level communicators. If our defense has those three things right there, it gives us a shot in every single category across the board, like I said. And so I looked at it. We've done a lot of data study here, looking at just years where we struggle with certain concepts or different things. But the teams that I've had the privilege of coaching and being a part of, when they did those three things, they were hard to beat. And it didn't matter size, speed, athleticism. Like I said, just those three. And
throughout your career, what are some lessons that you learned that now make you a better coach today?
So the first one, the biggest one that I learned was, one, I don't know everything. And that's a simple answer to give to a lot of people, is that, the arrogance, I know everything, I know best. And I think as people, especially coordinators, I think, well, the coordinator knows everything. And the answer to that is no. Two heads are better than one, three are better than two. That's always a great answer. It's got to be the vision that I see, but you got to incorporate the people around you, because they are also, and we have great coaches here, they do a great job. So it was, one, learning to trust the guys around you while you build each other up, and you're building something together, kind of a thing. And so even though my name is the defensive coordinator, all the guys I get to work with, they do a phenomenal job of making that easy. And then the second biggest thing is that, as a young coach, I thought I was like the best coach, and a mentor that I had, his name was Coach Davis and Coach Dodd. When I was in McKinney, they pulled me aside one year and they were like, listen, you're not. That's essentially what they said. Like, what have you done to help out the coaches, the varsity coaches here? I was a freshman coach, coaching linebackers and defensive line and tight ends and O-line, and I was chomping the bit to get my chance to be a varsity coach, and they're like, you're not ready. And I could not understand why. It didn't make any sense to me. And when they pulled me aside and they were like, listen, you have done nothing for the guys around you, the coaches, the coordinators, the safeties coach, the outside backers coach. Like, what film are you watching to help them? How are you helping them with breaking down film? Are you looking for tendencies? Like, you shouldn't be told what to do. Your goal is to help the guys that are in the positions to make the calls. And honestly, I'm grateful that those two guys did that. And they both had a very unique way of doing it. Like I said, Coach Davis was a little bit more brunt and a little bit more brash about it, but I needed to hear that, and I didn't like it. And then Coach Dodd was a little more, he was a little bit more passionate. I was closer with him, and it was honestly probably harder to hear from Coach Dodd because I felt like we were so close. But as I stepped away from it, I was like, I kind of went back to if I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail in the terms of doing my very best, and my very best needs to be helping them. And if that's what I have to do, that's the mission that I have, then I got to go do it. And so those two things right there, I think, have transformed me as a coach. Now that I'm in this role, my expectations are those things, like bring thoughts to the table, bring things to the table, but also what are you doing to make some of the tough decisions that I have to make, on a Friday night game or a Thursday night game. Like I said, how do you make those decisions easier for me and for our staff and for our program? Like I said, that's a big deal for me. And so those are some lessons I've learned. Like I said, those would be the two biggest ones, I would guess.
And as a coach, your biggest job is to serve these kids, to serve these young men. And doing that, you learn so much about them and help them realize so much about themselves. But I also want to ask you, what has it helped you realize about yourself?
So you're absolutely right. Serving kids is really why I think the guys that make this a calling of their life, like that's what they're called, to serve young men, and to guide them. And what I've learned through that process is, one, I think a lot of times I need the kids sometimes just as much as they need me. Like they change the way I think of things and the way I adapt things and the way I communicate. Not just football stuff, but also some of the things that these kids deal with are different than the things that I was dealing with. And hearing them talk about it, I'm like, I don't know how I would have handled that at your age. And so it's just been, I guess, an acknowledgement that I need them just as much as they need me. And then I would also kind of add a caveat to that, as stressful as that is, and being able to hold on to some of that heavy weight that these kids will drop on my shoulders, I acknowledge that my life has been leading to that moment of just being able to do that, and so all the stuff, the hard stuff.
And my last question for you, Coach, why is Lone Star High School the best place for somebody to come play football?
Well, like I said, we say it's an all-stop shop. We got a great track program with Coach Johnson. Like I said, speed development here. He's a college-level track coach. He trains people. Like I said, he was training Olympians last year, a couple years ago, on speed development stuff. So you got him. He was also a corner at Oklahoma State a long time ago. Great corners coach. You've got two DCs on the defensive side, including myself, that were previous DCs. And so they bring their own set of knowledge to the game. Our strength program here with Coach Massaro, he's been a strength coach at the college level, at the high school level. He's CSCS. Like I said, what he brings to strength and conditioning is a college level format. And then I think the biggest thing is the culture that we've built here over this time is that there is extremely high expectations for coaches, for players. Like that is if you don't want high expectations, this is not the place for you. This is, you're not gonna love it here. And, I think that's what makes this place special. And then I think the guys, the men in this room that lead this thing, especially Coach Rayburn, like I said, that these kids know that we care about them. Like I said, and that's first and foremost. Like I said, there's not a kid in that room that any one of these coaches wouldn't take their shirt off their back and hand it to them. Like I said, picking up kids early in the morning, feeding them, giving them water. Like I said, mentoring them. Like I said, heck, going fishing with some kids and spending time, their own free time with these kids to build relationships, I think is what makes this place unique. And it allows us to push those kids a little further, a little further down that path than even what they thought or I think they can go sometimes. And so, this is a relationship game, and I would say we're best at relationships.